Welcome to the Journal. The battle is joined, as they say, and here's the headline that framed it. High noon, Geithner versus the American oligarchs. The headline is on one of the most informative news sites in the blogosphere, called BaselineScenario.com. Here's the quote that grabbed me. There comes a time in every economic crisis, or more specifically, in every struggle to recover from a crisis, when someone steps up to the podium to promise the policies that they say will deliver you back to growth. The person has political support, a strong track record, and every incentive to enter the history books. But one nagging question remains. Can this person, your new economic strategist, really break with the vested elites that got you into this much trouble? And here's the man who asked that question. Simon Johnson is former chief economist at the International Monetary Fund. He now teaches global economics and management at MIT's Sloan School of Management and is a senior fellow of the Peterson Institute. He's co-founder of that website I quoted, BaselineScenario.com, where he analyzes the global economic and financial crisis. Welcome, Simon Johnson, to the Journal.
Nice to be here.
What are you signaling with that headline, Geithner versus the American oligarchs?
I think I'm signaling something a little bit shocking to Americans, and to myself, actually, which is the situation we find ourselves in at this moment, this week, is very strongly reminiscent of the situations we've seen many times in other places. But they're places we don't like to think of ourselves as being similar to. They're emerging markets. It's Russia or Indonesia or a Thailand-type situation or Korea. That's not comfortable. America is different. America is special. America is rich. And yet we've somehow find ourselves in the grip of the same sort of crisis and the same sort of oligarchs.
Oligarchy is an un-American term, as you know. It means a government by a small number of people. We don't like to think of ourselves that way.
It's a way of governing. As you said, it comes from a system they tried out in Greece, in Athens, from time to time. And it was actually an antithesis to democracy in that context. But it is exactly what you said. It's a small group with a lot of power, a lot of wealth. They're not necessarily always the names, the household names that spring to mind in this kind of context, but they are the people who can pull the strings, who have the influence, who call the shots.
Are you saying that the banking industry trumps the president, the Congress, and the American government when it comes to this issue so crucial to the survival of American democracy?
I don't know. I hope they don't trump it, but the signs that I see this week, the body language, the words, the op-eds, the testimony, the way they're treated by certain congressional committees, it makes me feel very, very worried. I have this feeling in my stomach that I felt in other countries, much poorer countries that were heading into really difficult economic situations, when there's a small group of people who got you into a disaster and who are still powerful. The disaster may even have made them more powerful, and you know you need to come in and break that power, and you can't. You're stuck.
Both the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times reported this week that Obama's top two political aides, Rahm Emanuel and David Axelrod, have pushed for tougher action against the banks, but they didn't prevail. Obama apparently sided with Geithner and the Treasury Department in using a velvet glove.
What I read from that is that there's an unnecessary and excessive deference to the experts or the supposed experts. And I think the view that a lot of people have in Washington, I live in Washington, I follow this very closely, the view is that you need to rely on the technocrats. And the technocrats saying this is the way to go and you mustn't be too tough on the banks because that will have adverse consequences for credit and for the economy and for unemployment and so on and so forth. Those technocrats, if that's what they're saying, are wrong. That is not the right way to deal with this crisis. There are many fine professionals at Treasury with great experience who've spent their lives working on important issues related to the United States. What we face right now is not a typical U.S. issue. We face a crisis, and the President said this on Monday night. President Obama said, we've never seen anything like this since the Great Depression. Therefore, nobody working now, has any first-hand experience. And he also said we may face what he called a lost decade. We've never seen that anywhere other than in Japan in the 1990s, right? It's something for Treasury officials to really understand and to really understand the alternatives. Then they're not, with all due respect to them, that they're not the ultimate authority. I don't think they're the right people. The correct people you should be asking this question to are people at the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. And I can tell you that what they're saying is that the policy that we seem to be pursuing of being nice to the banks is a mistake. The powerful people are the insiders. They're the CEOs of these banks. They're people who run these banks. They're the people who paid themselves the massive bonuses at the end of last year. Now, those bonuses are not the essence of the problem, but they are a symptom of an arrogance and a feeling of invincibility that tells you a lot about the culture of those organizations and the attitudes of the people who lead them.
Geithner is hired as his chief of staff, the lobbyist from Goldman Sachs. The new Deputy Secretary of State was until last year a CFO of Citigroup. Another CFO of Citigroup is now Assistant to the President and Deputy National Security Advisor for International Economic Affairs. And one of his deputies also came from Citigroup. One new member of the President's Economic Recovery Advisory Board comes from UBS, which is being investigated for helping rich clients evade taxes. You're probably too young to remember that old song, sounds like Mac the Knife is back in town. I mean, is that what you're talking about with this web of relationships?
Absolutely. I don't think you have enough time on your show to go through the full list of people and all the positions they've taken. I'm sure these are good people, don't get me wrong. And these are fine, upstanding citizens who have a certain perspective and a certain kind of interest and who see the world a certain way. And exactly a web of interest, I think, is what you said, and that's exactly the right way to think about it. That web of interest is not my interest or your interest or the interest of the taxpayer. It's the interest, first and foremost, of the financial industry in this country.
Do you think that Obama understands how these guys play the game? Let me play you the recording of a conference call Huffington Post released this week. One of the top officials of Morgan Stanley is speaking to his colleagues. Here it is.
I'm going to turn to a topic that I suspect is near and dear to everybody's hearts, which is retention. There will be a retention award. Please do not call it a bonus. It is not a bonus. It is an award. The award will be based on 08 full year production. Clearly would have been cheaper to have done it off 09, but we think it's the right thing to do, and we've made that decision.
What he's basically saying is business as usual. Go about your daily lives, get the bonuses. You may rebrand them as awards, but it really shows you the arrogance, and I think these people think that they've won. They think it's over. They think it's won. They think that we're going to pay out 10 or 20% of GDP to basically make them whole. It's astonishing.
Why wouldn't they believe that? I mean, when I watched the 8 CEOs testify before Congress, the House Financial Services Committee earlier this week, I had just finished reading a report that almost every member of that committee had received contributions from those banks last year. I mean, in a way, that's like paying the cop on the beat not to arrest you, right?
I called up one of my friends on Capitol Hill after that testimony and that session. I said, what happened? This was your moment. Why did they pull their punches like that? And my friend said, the committee members, know the bankers too well.
Last year, the securities and investment industry made $146 million in campaign contributions. Commercial banks, another $34 million. I mean, American taxpayers don't have a flea's chance on a dog like that, do they?
It's a massive problem, obviously. And I do think, though, the good news is there are people in the White House. I think the president himself is aware of this broader issue. And obviously the campaign, the Obama campaign, was very good at getting small contributions and trying to minimize the impact of major donors like that. But at the same time, these people are throughout the system of government. They are very much at the forefront of the Treasury. The Treasury is apparently calling the shots on their economic policies. This is a decisive moment. Either you break their power or we're stuck for a long time with this arrangement.
When Tim Geithner said earlier in the week that the American people have lost faith in some financial institutions and the government, did it occur to you that this was the same man who was president of the New York Fed through much of this debacle?
I have no problem with poachers turning gamekeeper, right? So if you know where the bodies are buried, maybe you can help us sort out the problem. And I did think the first 3 or 4 minutes of what Mr. Geithner said were very good as a definition of the problem and pointing the finger clearly at the bankers and saying that the government had been slow to react, and of course that included himself. I liked that. And then he started to talk about the specifics, and he said the compensation caps we've put in place for the executives of these banks are strong. And at that point, I just fell out of my chair. That is not true. That is factually inaccurate, in my opinion. That this $500,000 limit and deferred stock is some kind of restriction on what they do. It's deferred stock, Bill. It's not restricted. You can get as much stock as you want. As soon as you pay back the government, you can cash out of that. That's one. Second, you can, sorry to get technical, but reset the strike price. This is something you and your viewers, you need to figure this one out. Just look for these words, okay? Follow them through the press. When you get into trouble, when your company goes down and you have massive amounts of stock options that aren't worth much anymore because the stock price has gone down, you say, oh, well, we're going to reset our option prices. And basically it means that at the end of the day, these people are going to walk away with tens, if not hundreds, of millions of dollars paid for by basically an insurance policy that you and I are providing. Think of it like this. Our taxpayer money is insuring their bonuses. We're making sure their companies, their banks survive, and eventually, of course, the economy will turn around. Things will get better. The banks will be worth a lot of money, and they will cash out. And we will be paying higher taxes. We and our children will be paying higher taxes so those people could have those bonuses. That's not fair. It's not acceptable. It's not even good economics.
Are we chumps?
We'll find out. Yes, we may be, okay? It depends on how we play this politically. It depends on what our political system does. It depends, I think, on the level of reaction. The financial system is playing us for chumps, okay? The bankers think we're chumps. We'll find out. We have leadership that can handle this. We'll find out what they do.
There was a moment in the hearings